took a stroll through the deep, dark wood. An owl saw the mouse, and the mouse looked good. "Where are you going to, little brown mouse?" "Come and have tea in my treetop house." "It's terribly kind of you, owl, but no, I'm going to have tea with a..."
The grand high witch was starting to talk again. "I am now going to prove to you," she said, "that this recipe is working to perfection. You understand, of course, that you can set the alarm clock to go off at any time you like. It does not have to be 9 o'clock. So yesterday, I am personally preparing a small quantity of the magic formula in order to give to you a public demonstration. But I am making one small change in the recipe. Before I am roasting the alarm clock, I am setting it to go off not at 9 o'clock the next morning, but at 3:30 the next afternoon, which means 3:30 this afternoon. And that," she said, glancing at her wristwatch, "is in precisely 7 minutes' time." The audience of witches was listening intently, sensing that something dramatic was about to happen. "So what am I doing yesterday with this magic liquid?" asked the grand high witch. "I will tell you what I am doing. I am putting one droplet of it into a very squishy chocolate bar, and I am giving this bar to a repulsive, smelly little boy who's hanging around the lobby of the hotel." The grand high witch paused. The audience remained silent, waiting for her to go on. "I watched this repulsive little brute gobbling up the squishy bar of chocolate, and when he had finished, I said to him, 'Was that good?' He said it was great, so I said to him, 'Would you like some more?' And he said, 'Yes.' So I said, 'I will give you 6 more chocolate bars like that if you will meet me in the ballroom of this hotel at 3:25 tomorrow afternoon.'" "6 bars?" cried this greedy little boy. "I'll be there. You bet I'll be there." "So the stage is set," shouted the grand high witch. "The proof of the pudding is about to begin. Do not forget that before I am roasting the alarm clock yesterday, I am setting it for 8:30 today. It is now," she glanced again at her watch, "it is now exactly 25 minutes past 3, and the nasty little stinker who will be turning into a mouse in 5 minutes' time should be at this very moment be standing outside the door." And by gum, she was absolutely right. The boy, whoever he might be, was already rattling the door handle and banging on the doors with his fist.
Story time with Buddy and Cat. What book are we reading today? Who likes breaking every rule? Who made Tortoise look a fool? Who did a piddle in the paddling pool? Bad Bunny. Who got stuck in the cookie jar? Who went toot and blamed Grandpa? Who kicked Mouse's ball too far? Bad Bunny. To look at him, you'd think he was just as sweet as he could be, but turn your back and soon you'll see Bad Bunny's naughty. Who looks up with big wide eyes when he's telling great big lies? Who's been eating all the pies? Bad Bunny. Who made Grandpa's face go red, running through the flower bed, wearing knickers on his head? Bad Bunny. His mummy said, "Oh, Bunny Boo, if you play tricks the way you do, one day the trick will be on you." He didn't listen. Who put glue in Badger's sock? Who cut holes in the cereal box? Who got caught by Mr. Fox. Bad Bunny. Who's feeling very hot? Who would really rather not be in Fox's cooking pot? Bad Bunny. Who has got no friends to call? Who played tricks upon them all? Who's feeling very small? Bad Bunny. Dear Fox, he cried, I'm begging you, please don't eat this rabbit stew, because it's full of rabbit poo. Who's running down the path? Who shouts, thank you for the bath? Who is having such a laugh? Bad Bunny.
There was comparative calm in the Wormwood household for about a week after the superglue episode. The experience had clearly chastened Mr. Wormwood, and he seemed temporarily to have lost his taste for boasting and bullying. Then he struck again. Perhaps he had had a bad day at the garage and not sold enough crummy second-hand cars. There were many things to make a man irritable when he arrives home from work in the evening, and a sensible wife will usually notice the storm signals and leave him well alone until he simmers down. When Mr. Wormwood arrived back from the garage that evening, his face was as dark as a thundercloud, and somebody was clearly for the high jump pretty soon. His wife recognised the signals immediately and made herself scarce. He then strode into the living room. Matilda happened to be curled up in an armchair in the corner, totally absorbed in a book. Mr. Wormwood switched on the television. The screen lit up. The programme blared. Mr. Wormwood glared at Matilda. She hadn't moved. She had somehow trained herself by now to block her ears to the ghastly sound of the dreaded box. She kept right on reading, and for some reason this infuriated the father. Perhaps his anger was intensified because he saw her getting pleasure for something that was beyond his reach. Don't you ever stop reading, he snapped at her. Oh, hello, Daddy, she said pleasantly. Did you have a good day? What's this trash? He said, snatching the book from her hands. It isn't trash, Daddy, it's lovely. It's called The Red Pony. It's by John Steinbeck. He's an American writer. Why don't you try it? You'll love it. Filth, Mr. Wormwood said. If it's by an American, it's certainly to be filth. That's all that they write about. No, Daddy, it's beautiful. Honestly, it is. It's about... I don't want to know what it's about, Mr. Wormwood barked. I'm fed up with your reading anyway. Go and find yourself something useful to do. With frightening suddenness, he now began ripping the pages out of the book in handfuls and throwing them in the waste paper basket. Matilda froze in horror. The father kept going. There seemed little doubt that the man felt something of a kind of jealousy. How dare she seemed to be saying with each page. How dare she enjoy reading books when he couldn't? How dare she? That's a library book, Matilda cried. It doesn't belong to me. I have to return it to Mr. Phelps. Then you'll have to buy another one, won't you? The father said, still tearing out the pages. You'll have to save your pocket money until there's enough in the kitty to buy a new one for your precious Mrs. Phelps, won't you? With that, he dropped the now empty covers of the book into the basket and marched right out of the living room, leaving the telly blaring. September, Tuesday. First of all, let me get something straight. This is a journal, not a diary. I know what it says on the cover, but when Mom went out to buy this thing, I specifically told her to get one that didn't say diary on it. Great, all I need is for some jerk to catch me carrying this book around and get the wrong idea. The other thing I want to clear up right away is that this was Mum's idea, not mine. But if she thinks I'm going to write down my feelings in here or whatever, she's crazy. So just don't expect me to be all Dear Diary this and Dear Diary that.
Crash! The old girl's head went through the ceiling, as though it were butter. George stood in the bedroom, gazing at the shambles. There was a big hole in the floor and another in the ceiling, and sticking up like a post between the two was the middle part of Grandma. Her legs were in the room below, her head in the attic. I'm still going, came the old screechy voice from up above. Give me another dose, my boy, and let's go through the roof. No, Grandma, no, George called back. You're busting up the whole house. Oh, to heck with the house, she shouted. I want some fresh air. I haven't been outside for 20 years. By golly, she is going through the roof, George told himself. He ran downstairs. He rushed out of the back door into the yard. It would be simply awful, he thought, if she bashed up the roof as well. His father would be furious. And he, George, would get the blame. He had made the medicine. He had given her too much. Don't come through the roof, Grandma, he prayed. Please don't.
The two women and the small boy stood absolutely still on the grass underneath the tree, gazing up at this extraordinary fruit. James's little face was glowing with excitement. His eyes were big and bright as 2 stars. He could see the peach swelling larger and larger, as clearly as if it were a balloon being blown up. In half a minute, it was the size of a melon. In another half a minute, it was twice as big again. Just look at it growing, Aunt Spiker cried. Will it ever stop? Aunt Sponge shouted, waving her fat arms and starting to dance around in circles. And now it was so big it looked like an enormous butter-coloured pumpkin dangling from the top of the tree. Get away from the tree trunk, you stupid boy, Aunt Spiker yelled. The slightest shake and I'm sure it'll fall off. It must weigh 20 or 30 pounds at least. The branch that the peach was growing on was beginning to bend over, further and further because of the weight. Stand back, Aunt Sponge shouted. It's coming down. The branch is going to break. But the branch didn't break. It simply bent over more and more as the peach got heavier and heavier, and still it went on growing. In another minute, this mammoth fruit was as large and round and fat as Aunt Sponge herself, and probably just as heavy. It has to stop now, Aunt Spiker yelled. It can't go on forever. But it didn't stop. Soon it was the size of a small car and reached halfway to the ground. Both aunts were now hopping round and round the tree, clapping their hands and shouting all sorts of silly things in their excitement. Hallelujah, Aunt Spiker shouted. What a peach, what a peach. Treffico, Aunt Sponge cried. Magnifico, splendifico, and what a meal. It's still growing. I know. As for James, he was so spellbound by the whole thing that he could only stand and stare and murmur quietly to himself, Oh, isn't it beautiful? It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Shut up, you little twerp, Aunt Spiker snapped, happening to overhear him. It's none of your business. That's right, Aunt Sponge declared. It's got nothing to do with you whatsoever. Keep out of it. Look, Aunt Spiker shouted. It's growing faster than ever now. It's speeding up. I see it, Spiker. I do. Bigger and bigger it grew, bigger and bigger. Then at last, when it had become nearly as tall as the tree that it was growing on, as tall and wide, in fact, as a small house, the bottom part of it gently touched the ground, and there it rested. It can't fall off now, Aunt Sponge shouted. It stopped growing, Aunt Spiker cried. No, it hasn't. Yes, it has. It's slowing down, Spiker. It's slowing down. But it hasn't stopped yet. You watch it.